laugh me a laugh, grin me a grin, and then I know that we can win. Dance me a dance, joke me a joke, and blow the clouds away. Come on! You gotta play me a tune, sing me a song, and we can float life all along. Just you and me, come on and sing, together we'll be okay.
Hello and welcome to this Bar Steward special podcast, where I am absolutely delighted to welcome the legendary on-course bookmaker that is Gary Wiltshire. Thank you for joining us, Gary.
Yeah. Hello, Lee. How are you? How are you, everyone?
All good. This should be a belter, as a lot of your interviews have gone in the past, so I'm looking forward to this very much. So,
I've got to start, Lee. I've got to stop you. I've listened to you a few times and you've had bookies on who never lose. I can assure you, I'm not one of them, as you know. So when I listen to all your recordings you've done before and you have bookies on and they keep on winning, I think to myself, I must be doing something wrong. But after 50 years in the game, we're still here, aren't we? We're still alive and kicking.
and this is it. What an amazing life. Gary, you had your first published works called Winning It Back, which highlighted one of the worst moments in your life when Frankie Dettori went through the card at Royal Ascot, and rightfully you took on the Fujiyama crest at very short prices and was on the floor afterwards. Now, Gary, you're back with your second published work titled 50 Years in the Betting Jungle, which is, of course, available at weatherbyshop.co.uk. That's weatherbyshop.co.uk. Go there and purchase Gary's book, because I can tell you now, lads and lasses, I've finished reading the book and I can honestly say, not just because Gary's here, it's one of the best racing life story books I have ever read. It had me howling. It had me in despair. You can actually feel it when you read it. It's an amazing read.
That's fantastic, yeah.
It's safe to say that you've led a life.
Yeah, I've got to say one thing, Lee. I know what you said about the book's lovely, but I never did it on my own. I had Paul Jones. When Weatherby's come on to me, you know, Weatherby's are the Rolls Royce of horse racing, aren't they? When I said I want to do a new book, because the Racing Post did the first one, and when they said we'll do it, and then all of a sudden had to have a co-writer. I told him everything to put down, and he done everything with me. And Paul Jones, who does all the Cheltenham previews, he was my right-hand man. Don't get me wrong, he drove me mad like most weeks sitting there. And you know when you get someone who has to do everything bang on the button. But he was one of them chaps. We had to do it, Lee. Listen, I've told a million lies in my life. But in this book, you couldn't lie. Everything had to be the truth, and they looked at everything. And it's been really selling well. And as you said, there's some bad moments in there, some good moments. But the Tory day, when you said it was the worst day of my life, I can assure you, I know it sounds ridiculous, but it turned out to be the best day of my life. I lost my house, I lost the cars, I lost everything. But I've come back fighting, and we're still here to tell the tale, Lee.
Well, you must have some stones. I'm going to go back to your early days. I'm not going to reveal too much from the book because it's not fair of me to do so. And I want people to read it because it is that good. But the only thing I found amazing was that when you were young, Val Cray came and bought you sweets.
What it was, my mum and dad, we were born into the market gate, selling flowers in London, in Level Lane Market in Oban. And the Crays mum and dad used to come down the market and buy some flowers and that every week down there. And I used to sit on the store as well, only a kid. I never knew they were. And they always used to buy some flowers for their mum, Violet, and she was there. And they used to bring me a Mars bar or a Bounty or something to buy. I never knew they were like. It was her sons. And all of a sudden, I used to have a bar of chocolate and that. But I never knew. I was only a kid. And I was only there in my school holidays, because other than that, I was at a primary school, but where I grew up in London. But I was brought up in London, Lee, and really and truly, I think the most story that was missed out of the book, really, was when BBC, after the Dettori day, I worked for BBC. Their producer, Dermot Kaminsky, he wanted me on after Stato. Stato was the man before me, Angus Loughran, lovely chap. And when Angus left, he said to me, I want you on the BBC doing the betting with John Parrott. Well, John Parrott has always been my idol at the snooker. When he asked us to do it, and I'll be truthful with you, everyone said it wouldn't work. You got a Londoner and you got a Scouser, because I can't really talk in the posh voice, and John the same, really. And honestly and truthfully, when we worked with the BBC, we done the Grand National, we done Royal Ascot, we done Epsom, and it worked. We was with Claire Balding, who was an absolute angel to all of us. Willie Carson was on the team. And it just worked, Lee. If you was going to produce any of your shows, you got a young lady producing your show today for you,
Yep.
you would never have put us two together. I swear to you, you would have said, no, I've come to nothing. When you said I was on my knees after the Tory day, I weren't on my knees. I was underneath the knee, underneath the ground, you know. But it was just one of them things, Lee. Really and truly, when you said a lifestyle, it is a lifestyle. I've had it. And amazingly, and this is amazingly now, the older you get, we've just come back from Benidorm, and even when you go in the bars and everything, and they shout out, "Oh, wait, do you want a pizza?" Like, because Frankie, all taking the piss out of you.
Yeah.
I've learned how to live with it. But it's a life story that no one would ever be able to do it again because, as I said, most of the bookies now, they're not bookies, are they? You're not doing nothing wrong. Don't get me wrong when I say they're doing nothing wrong, but they win, 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 win.
Yeah.
And in my life, and I think your life as well, we win and we lose, don't we?
I can always remember John Brown coming on Channel 4 Racing in the 90s, the former William Hill boss, said after a bad Cheltenham that the company had posted pre-tax losses for the year. And that's just not seen nowadays. No, that's never going to happen now.
The man you mentioned there, Lee, I'm not being funny, love it. Yeah, I'll get on hell with any bookmate. But I was really hurt when William Hill, when I'd done my money, I did do some. I owed Corals, I think, 460 grand. And it ain't a lie because on the first book, Winning It Back, on the back page, there's a picture of my account with Corals, what I owed them.
Yeah.
And I went up to see him on the Monday, and they was as good as gold. On my life, Trevor Beaumont, who was managing director, he said, "Look, Gal, you've got a good name in the game. I know you and everything." I said, "Trevor, I got nothing." I said, "I've got to sell my house. My house was 600 odd grand. I sold a Warren house at Little Orwood. I had to sell me cars and I finished up in a garage in Birmingham, finished up after. But I paid everyone. But the only one who wanted their money in 14 days was William Mill.
Mm-hmm.
I owed them fuck all, to be truthful with you. I owed them 27 grand.
Yeah.
And I got the money, and their rep, who unfortunately is not with us anymore, Mick Burton, and he put his arms around me and give me the gal, you know it ain't me. And I managed to get the look. I got the money, but you know yourself, you can't find it immediately. Anyway, I managed to get it, and I went to the bank. I'll never forget, and I got, I think it was 27 or 20. I forget that, so many years ago. And I got them in all in pound coins and silver and 50 pences, everything. And I met him on the A1 near Knaresborough. That's near Leeds, isn't it?
Yeah, very close, yeah.
And I went there, and funny enough, we love going up there now because we go to the Weatherby Whaler when we want to have a bit of fish and chips. Like. And I met him, and I said, "Your money's in the boot." And I'm more like, they couldn't even carry it. It was in an holder, all the coins and everything. And I thought, bearing in mind, he was a Londoner as well. And I always thought you stuck together.
Mm.
But anyway, I paid the 27 grand. If not, they were going to take my licence away from me. Really and truthfully, I should have done it. Because if you'd have had your licence taken away, it's only for a year, and then you get it back again.
Yeah.
But where I was brought up, and I had the people who looked up when I was a kid, and in them days, it was called knocking, and you never knocked anyone. You give people a bad name. I had family who wanted to come into the game, boys and everything. And so in the end, I'm glad I paid. But as I said, William Hill, you hit a bit of a bad tone there, out of them all. Yeah, they were the only ones who wanted it in 2 weeks. If not, they were going to take me to the rooms, and I would have lost my licence, and that would have been it.
Shame on you, William Hill, of course, now Evoke. For Gary, who was made good on everything that happened that day. And that shows you got some class and some balls about you, Gary. I just want to touch on Fred Durn. This surprised me in that most people view Fred Durn as sort of evil corporation bookmaker, but you've got to know the real Fred Durn, haven't you?
Well, it's amazing, really, because I don't know if you're going to come to it later on, but all my life I've been around about weight, not the weight of money, unfortunately, the weight, the gear you put in your belly and eat. Because I was at one stage, I was 37 stone. When I'd done BBC, Royal Ascot, and I had a dress suit made for me, and when I finished the show, I was gone. You know, I was taking my coat off, and honestly, as I took, there was like a bucket of water come underneath my arm. That's how bad I was with sweat and everything. But you couldn't show it, could you?
No.
But Fred, that day, the Tory day, I was an absolute bastard to every bookie in the world. If you read the Sunday paper, I was the man that destroyed racing.
Yeah.
I'd done me money, I'd done me absolutes. But how have I destroyed racing? There was an horse that was 16 to 1. I got the horse down to 2 to 1 on 9 and 4. So that was my thing. But without me standing up to it, it would have been even money. Now, God knows what'll happen now with the exchanges, Lee. If that happened now, look, your dad was a bookie.
Yep.
And you roughly know that when people back one, all we do is shorten the odds up, don't we?
Yep.
And all I did, I laid one. I think the first bet I laid was 9 to 2. I said Corals had 40 grand on it to win 180. And then my head was gone. And afterwards, I'd done a BBC radio show in, funny enough, I'll do it now, because where I do the Betfred TV from Salford, Media City, that's where the BBC is. And I've done it with an Irish fella called Steve. I can't think of it. He had a show on a Friday night and a Saturday night and a Sunday night.
I know what it means.
Can't think of his second name. He's tremendous. Anyway, I sat there with him and he went through it and he said, I'll tell you why you did it on the day. And he said, inside every fat person is a thin person. And he said, you were standing on that bit of wood that day, the box you stood on the rails, and you thought you was the comedian at the end of the pier. And he said, you thought when you come alive and shouting the odds, and inside that fat person was a thin person, and you were the star of the show, and you were taking the bets, taking it, and inside your mind never ever went through what you were doing. And I'll be truthful with you, and this is a bad thing to say, I think he was right. I do think he was right, Lee, because on that day, on that box, I went there with just £2,000 in my pocket. We were going to Worcester. There was a traffic jam on the M40. I only went there with a £2,000 float. Now, you know, when you've been out with your dad in them days when you was a bookie at York in the middle of the course, that was your float money, weren't it?
Yep.
And £2,000, well, I stood the last one for 1.4 million. So that tells your story.
It was common, wasn't it, back then, that books, if you got stung on a fav late in the day or something, you'd had a bad day, it was commonplace that you'd just go to your neighbour or a good mate or whatever,
Yeah.
and you'd just slip us a few quid and I'll straighten you up next meeting, you know.
Yeah, that's what we did. That was our game. You know, it was a game of trust. But there was only one bookie who stuck up for me after that day, and that was Fred Doan. And I never ever met him, really, to be truthful with you. There was a comment of it, and I interviewed him what he said, and he said, well, we'd done our absolutes. We never knew how much we had to pay. We never knew where we had enough to pay, because in them days, they traded under Doan Brothers, I think, out of Salford, at Manchester. And he managed to get enough, him and Peter, his brother. What they did after, they finished up, they gave everyone a big cigar. It was just amazing what he did. And then we've finished up pals ever since. And not only pals, but he saved my life, like, because after that I was really down and I was doing the dogs for Sky TV, presenting it, the betting ring, me and Dave Smith. And I had diabetes bad. And I think I'd come back one day, I think it was Sunderland or Newcastle, and I must have had 40 bottles of Lucozade on the way home, 40.
Jesus.
I had a kid driving me, I had diabetes bad. I was gone. And he got me to Solihull Hospital. And when he got me to Solihull Hospital, they kept me in naturally, put me on a machine. And Fred found out about it, run my boy up, run my Nicky up, and said, how's your dad? And he said, Nicky said, well, his words were, I think he's gone, Fred. She had something happen. And that same night, the sister come in and she said, I think at 8 o'clock in the morning, you're going to the Parkway Hospital in Birmingham. And I said, what for? And she said, you got a private ambulance. She said, you're having a gastric sleeve, not the baby one, the balloon, the proper one where you can't get out of it.
Yeah, yeah.
And I said, no, because at the time I was struggling as well. Like, she said, no, it's been paid for. And I said, well, who's paid for it? And then naturally it come out, it was Fred Dunn. So really, Betfred saved my life. It was just one of them things. And I think even now, Betfred are saving the lives of punters in betting shops, because you go in a betting shop now, Lee, no one wants to give you a chance to back a winner. And he still does them boost on a Saturday morning. And I still do a couple of days on a Sunday. I do the dog show for him, because I push every dog, every favourite out, trying to give the punters. I'll go bigger than like the Betfair. So if something's like 6-4 on Betfair, I'll go 7-4 or 2-1, trying to give the public a bit of value. But even when you go big prices, you're still hard to win as a punter, I can assure you.
Yeah.
And that's how really I met Fred. You go to his parties now. Unfortunately, his wife died. Mo, she was a diamond. So I'll tell you a story now that's been in no book as well, and this is just between us and people listen to your show. Mo was a diamond. She always used to say, Gal, if you need any money, come and see me, but don't tell him. Right, don't tell Fred. Anyway, this is an unbelievable story. I went to the funeral, it was JP McManus sitting there. I was on the with Tomo, John Joe O'Neill was there, and everyone sitting there. And I think I had to give Mo 700 quid. That's what I owed her, like, before she died. Now, no one knew, did they? Anyway, I was walking out of there at the funeral, and Fred was standing there. I think he was standing with John Holmes, who owns Chelmsford Racecourse. I went up and I said, Fred. And he went, yeah. And I pulled the 700 quid out of my pocket. And his words were, before I said anything, was that Mo's girl? So really and truthfully, if I never had said nothing and kept the 700 quid, well, you know what would have happened.
Yeah.
Where she said, don't tell him. And later on in life, he said to me, you always thought you never knew nothing. But in other words, they were playing me one against one. That's what life's all about, isn't it, Lee? At least I paid, and good job, because that day, still comes back in my mind now when I paid the 700 quid. He put it in his top pocket. I'll never forget. And I think we've always been friends. But from that day, that's been the day when there is a bit of trust there. You know what I mean? Between you.
Yeah, exactly. This is old school stuff, and it's fascinating to listen to the other side of Sir Fred Durn. Like, most people would not have a bar of Fred Durn, but the fact is that he was extremely kind to yourself, and I think that shows another side to people that you don't get to know unless someone.
Yeah, I think it could be the other way as well. I don't worry about
Oh
that.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know what I mean? He ain't no angel, like.
Absolutely not, because we know what this game's like. It's dog eat dog at the end of the day.
Oh, absolutely.
The reason we call it the betting jungle, especially in Big Mac days, is because that's exactly what it is. We're all trying to outdo one another. We're all trying to put food on the table. And that was the great game. It's not so great now, but we'll come on to that later. But I want to talk a bit about bookmaking now to you, Gary. It's fascinating that you've done like flapping tracks, point to points, main race courses. In the words of Johnny Murta, you love this game.
I love it. I love it. I love it, Lee. I love the game, Lee.
It's a terrible impression, and John does a lot better impression. But anyway, so I'd like to come first of all to the flapping days when you were doing bets on the flat. And I've been to flaps when I was younger and stuff. I owe a lot to ground racing in my younger days. It gave me a great life. I clerked at Bellevue for many a year, and I absolutely love ground racing as a sport. It's sad to see what it's become. What I would like to ask you is, in the flap days, which is tremendously difficult to win, you'd open up even money 2-1, 6-4, 3-1, 2-1,
Yeah.
6-4 the bottom, or something like that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
For somebody that's never experienced it, and some of our listeners won't have actually been to a flapping track, it's amazing because the 6-4 chance could end up sixes when you know certain faces have gone in.
Yeah.
And the one that's at twos could end up 1-3.
Them flapping days were unbelievable. And bearing in mind, at the time, I had nothing. I mean, I used to go most Wednesday nights with a wife's family allowance money. Like, I might have finished up with 100 or 120 quid between us to start with. Yeah. And we used to go to Aintree, which is near Leicestershire, and the Nuts Lane it was called. And there's a couple of lovely stories in the book about it as well. But it was one day as well, I went to Warwick. There was a flapping track at Warwick. And funny enough, the people that run it, the Peckhams, Dave Peckham and his brother John, got there. There was a race, 100-yard dash. So I put up, struck first bet, every bit in the book, 2-1 each of them, each of 6. Fella comes up, 200 quid at 2-1, laid him 100 at 2-1. So he took the 100 quid, cut him in half, as we normally do, as you would have known, being a race called bookish.
Yep.
Put up evens, he said even 200. I laid him even 100. Anyway, it went on. Then I put up 2-1 on, 200 to win at 1. I thought, yeah, you got that. Because any minute, I know there's going to be money for one of the other 6 dogs in the race. Anyway, in the end, it went on. I laid him. Then I went 3-1 on. He's had a 300 to win 1. And then the last bet was a 400 to win 100. So I thought myself, well, they're going to bet something in a minute. Anyway, cut a long story short, they've gone in the traps. I swear on my children, my grandchildren's life, the doggy back come out the traps and went down on its nose. So I thought, all right, 100-yard dash, can't win. In a matter of 10 yards, all the other dogs in the race were stopping. And when he come up to draw, the fella's name was Arthur Kane, and he owned a club right near Aston Villa. That's where the dog track used to be, Perry Bar. And he come up to me and he said, you thought you were clever, didn't you, son, laying me them bets? And I said, well, yeah, I did really. And I think he might have won 450 quid or 500. Well, he never won it, he stole it. And he said to me after, he said, all them 6 dogs were mine. He said, the other 5 dogs, he said, are all pets. He said they can't even walk 10 yards, not alone run 10 yards.
Yeah.
And he said to me, you thought you were clever. And I said, yeah, I did, funny enough. That I had a friendship with him, but he was well respected on the flapping tracks. But at Aintree as well, when I used to go to Aintree on a Wednesday night, they used to have a race, a no trial race, a 300-yard race. And I was really pals with Ginger McGee, John McGee, who's a top dog trainer. I think he might have won the Derby, didn't he, Johnny McGee?
Yeah.
He used to bring a black dog up there every week, right? And he used to put it in under no trial because when you had an NT next to it, no one knew it was the same dog going there every week. John used to stay in the car park, get a jockey, not when I say a jockey, get someone to take it in, like, who no one knows. And he used to have his 100 and 200 quid on with me. And I said, John, well, I'll do the best for you, the price, whatever you do. And I went there one week and I'll never forget, I laid even money. They come into a dog next door, there was a one at 2-1 and I missed it and I put up evens and the geezer had even 300. And then I missed another one, there was money. And in this race, this day, there was like a 3 dogs that they were backing off the ball. There was a champion there from Scotland, champion come down from Wales, and there was another dog from the Midlands who had come up. And in the end, the punters were taking evens, the three of them, to money.
Yeah.
When I say money, I'm talking like 500-600 quid each. But I knew that I had Ginger McGee's dog on my side as well. Anyway, all of a sudden they knocked that out to 6-1, Johnny McGee's dog, because there was no money for it. Like a greedy bastard, I suppose, that I am, I shouldn't be. Obviously, I slipped someone in to have a 650 quid on it with the other bookies as well.
Yeah.
And anyway, Ginger's dog won 3 lengths, like, and I think I won on it over 2.5 grand. Well, to win 2.5 grand at a flapping track is like winning 2.5 million on the Grand National.
Yeah.
It was just amazing. And Ginger was in the car. I think I returned him 1,400 quid. He had a 1,200 to 2. And he couldn't believe it because he's getting 6-4 for his money. But them things, like you said, Lee, it does happen. But where they back every dog in the race, and we never knew who was running it. Them days don't occur no more because we've only got one flapping track left in Scotland, haven't we? But other than that, it did happen to me just once. But it was a lovely feeling.
Yeah. How hard is it to make a book now?
I see.
Do you have any pictures at greyhound tracks currently, or?
No, none at Grand Tracks, funny enough. The last one I wanted to do was Toaster when it was the Grand Derby,
Yep.
and Lord Esquiff was in charge with Kevin Ackerman.
Yep.
And all of a sudden we had a pitch there that night, and then because of the people that was running the authorities who run greyhound racing, they wouldn't have me there because they said I was no good, because there was an article in the paper where I was supposed to have won £1 million punting, going around betting shops, and all I did was had a bet myself. And they let like Sharon, who's my partner now, and my son Nicky, and they could stand up on there on Grand Derby final night, but I had to sit in the car and I had to tell them what to do from the car. It was an absolute travesty of justice, but 2 weeks later, the Racing Post, I had Christopher Stewart Moore representing me. The same size story that they said to say that I was the instigator of the big gamble. It turned out I wasn't the instigator. I was nothing. I was not guilty and everything. And the people that was running bags at the time, because I was a good bookie. I say it now, I'm a terrible punter, but I'm a good bookie. And when I was at the Dogs at Oxford and places, I did used to win, but people, they never liked me at bags. Who was running it was a chap who was in charge called Tom Kelly, and he absolutely put the nail in my body. I'd have loved to make a book on the Derby day. And the following year, when it was all sorted, I did make a book in the restaurant on the Derby there at Toaster. I was official bookie in the restaurant, and we won a few quid. It was good, but I enjoyed it. But I do enjoy the dogs, Lee. As you know, I know you love the dogs,
Yep.
Bellevue and places like that. Still do a bit of work.
Sheffield. Yep.
Yeah, Sheffield. You know, my best pal Nick Brereton, he's got a company called Bredsbet, and I do a lot of work with Nick on the race course with Bredsbet, putting the name out there for them. They sponsor the Still City Cup and the Gym Crack at Sheffield. I still love a night at the dogs. The last time we made a book at Sheffield, we'd done our money, and it isn't the same, Lee, because everyone's got their phones now. And if you put up evens and they'll say to you it's 5-4 on Betfair, you either lay them 5-4 or you don't lay them. So really and truthfully, the game of making a book at the dogs is completely gone. How it used to be when you used to have your book and pen at Bellevue, them days are finished, pal.
It's amazing back in the day. I don't know if there's fear now in bookmakers today. Back in the day,
Absolutely, 100% right. I think most of them are shit scared to lie about.
yeah.
But the thing is, Lee, why that is, it's not the bookie's fault. Because now on their computers, and there's a little box at the end, and it's called a green up button.
Mm.
Well, I say most of the bookies, I don't know. A lot of them use it, not all of them. And they press that green up button, and whoever wins, they get rid of every bet. And if they take a grand on a race, they might green up for 150 quid. So whoever wins 150 quid, which you say, well, that ain't bookmaking. But if they do that 8 times a day and they go and get 1,200 quid, and if it's him and his wife who's doing it, it's a lot of money. And really and truthfully, it ain't a bad one. It is the new breed of bookmaking. And I think, I don't like saying it, that's the way the game's going to be, Lee, in future.
Do you think then we'd be better off without exchanges?
Oh, Lee, the exchanges have killed the game.
Yeah.
For punters as well. Listen, I owned horses. I had 29 horses that won one year. I used to have my horses with David Wintle. I had them with everyone. Didn't I? Norman McCauley, I had that horse, My Odds. I
Yeah.
bred it myself. Listen, we used to have gambles, and they used to run down the field. And then when we said we'd had a go, no one knew. We had a go. We went to the races and we backed our opinion, and the horses shortened. Nowadays, with everyone on the exchanges, you only want one little weak link to mention one thing before, one greedy not greedy, but look, if something's 10-1 tonight, and I say to you, Lee, this is going to win tomorrow. It's going to be 6-4. And you've got to have a very, very strong body not to have 30 quid on at 10-1 the night before. I've done it myself. People said, I fancy something, and you have a little bit on, and you think, well, 20 quid ain't going to hurt because no one's going to watch it. I get on ever so well with Bet Deck. John Carr, his brother, they used to run Chronicle Bookmakers, biggest bookmakers. Don't worry about all the bets that you hear when these so-called massive bookmakers appear on the course. Chronicle were big. Justin Carr, he was with JP, putting JP's money on, and JP could have £1 million on an horse at Cheltenham, and no one would know. Now, you watch the ITV now, and people come on, oh, I've just seen someone have 100 grand at 2-1 or whatever, and the bookies are reporting it. And in my day, you couldn't say you laid a big bet and who had it, because it was like confidence, weren't it, Lee?
Yep.
Someone come up to you and said to you when you were making a book at your who's back that, 9 times out of 10 you wouldn't tell them.
When bookmaking now, I think you've got 75 pitches up and down the country. That's
still got 75 all over. Yeah, I love going up to Perth. Still, I love Scotland. My Nicky, my boy, he's moved up to Troon now, and he's doing a bit of taxiing. Like, he comes down to work with us for Cheltenham. Still run the 2 pitches at Cheltenham this year on the rails. I trade under Bresbet on course on the rails because that's to get a few people to have a bet with Bresbet online doing it, and that's Nick's firm. But I've got them everywhere. Last year it was funny because I was at Chelmsford. He's 18 now, my grandson. Nicky brought him up to work for one day. Oh, he loved it. People love working at the racecourse. And then he took him to Perth, Nicky with him, and he said the worst thing he ever done, that I don't like, but a lot of bookies do, there was a 20-1 chance that won one race, and I think they won 1,600 quid on it, and he put his arm up in the air, Jack, and started giving it the eye, cheering it on, which you mustn't do, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And Nicky said to him, Jack, whatever you do, no. He said, but we've got a Skinner like Dad. We've got a Skinner. But can't have it, can you? They don't know. But that was a proud moment. He's 18 and he's happy in the game. And I think it's a game we love, isn't it, Lee? Even what you're doing now, broadcasting these shows, and there's people at home who's listening to them. And it brings back a bit of life, doesn't it, in the game?
Yeah, it's memories, isn't it, as well? We had a fantastic game. And I still hold out hopes, even though most people say the game's gone, that we can return to former glories. But Gary, this week, are you there yourself at Aintree?
No, I'm not even there. I'll be truthful. Aintree's got a very bad taste in my mouth. I'll tell you what it was. When we done the BBC, and I was big, right? I was big. And to do with racing, look, I love the Grand National. I love watching it. We couldn't drive our cars in. As you drive into Aintree, on the right-hand side, there's a big building. It's got a Paradox. I don't know if it was a nightclub. It's about a mile away from the racecourse, and we had to leave our car in. And I finished work the day we were there on the Grand National Day with John. Something happened. There was a trouble or something happened. We couldn't get the minibus, and we had to walk back to the Paradox where it was. Well, you can imagine, 37 stone. I don't know about walking a mile. I couldn't walk 50 yards. And there was a policeman there. And the policeman come over and he said I was struggling big time. And he said, what's the matter? And I said, I can't get up there. He said, yeah, get in the back. And he undone like the meat wagon when you get arrested and that.
Yeah.
And I said, I won't fit in there. He said, listen, he said, if I nicked you, you'd fit in there with a Liverpool voice, you know. And he pushed me on my life as hard as he pushed me in that cage, right? And I held on like for dear life, and he dropped me back to the car where the Paradox was. And after that, I thought, I don't want to go to Liverpool anymore. Even if someone said to me for the Grand National, you can go there tomorrow, you can go and get yourself £5 grand. And if I never had nothing in my pocket, I wouldn't do it, because that day knocked me spark out.
Yeah.
And all the money in the world, if you've got anybody out there, anyone who's lost anyone, or illnesses and everything, money can't buy lovely. And I can assure you it helps, it does help. But when you're ill, you're gone.
Yeah, no, fair play.
And that day at Aintree, it was just the day I got in that car and I thought to myself, I can't do this anymore. I just can't do it anymore. And people think it's easy working for the BBC in the betting ring there, but everyone comes up to you. If you like, people come up and talk to you, and you've got to put a smile on your face all the time. And that's what I'm good at, putting a smile on my face most of the time. But that's life, isn't it, Lee? But I'm definitely not going there. I'll tell you where I'll be Saturday. I'll be going to Great Yarmouth. I love the pitch we've got at Great Yarmouth on the rails and in Tats. And it's a nice people. Love the people down there in Norfolk. A lot of the people are holiday makers as well who come down there. And it's not about the money, big money and everything. We've built up a very good relationship there. Me and Sharon run that pitch on the rails. And people come up to us and Even the women had their fivers on and £2.50 each ways. And Bresbet sponsored the Grand Derby at Yarmouth 2 years ago. And that was a big major thing as well, because them Norfolk people, they love it when you help them, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I love Yarmouth, and that's it. And putting me up against the Grand National, I'll take a chance at Yarmouth against the Grand National.
I want to step back into your point to point. Are you still got pictures point to pointing?
Yeah, got pitches point to point. When I say about pitches point to point, I got a pitch this Saturday at a place called Easter, which is near Chelmsford, and it's very, very good Grand National Day, and it is the day of days, like. But looking at the runners and looking at the weather outside, I'm not being wicked, but I wanted to see a bit of rain this week and not the sunshine coming out, because when horses on the firm ground, Lee, if there's 7 races there, we might be lucky to get 30 runners or 25 runners. Well, you know yourself, 3 and 4 runners a race, people don't want that to have a bet. You know, it's one of them things. But I love Easter Saturday. I go to Kimble Easter Saturday, which is near Aylesbury, or we go to Dingley near Market Harbour. 2 pointer points there where I love, and no matter what, even if there was one runner a race, I'd still go, because I think with people, and when you get old as well, it's a ritual in your life where you look at your diary and you think Easter Saturday, point to point day, going to Kimble, you're going to Dingley, and you don't want to lose them. Them days in your life, I think you've got to do them. If you love them, you've got to be there, Lee.
This is a fascinating listen, because this is someone here in Gary that it's not just about the money, it's about the people and where he wants to be, where he wants to go. And the fact that he's not at Aintree and he's going to these meetings. But I want to know, Gary, right? What's your tactics for beating the Hooray Henrys on the point to point?
Well, I don't know about that. You brought up something there, Lee, that you just said there, and about money and things. And I've even put it in my book, like, I think money destroys people. It destroyed my life, to be truthful. I'm not being funny. I was a millionaire. I started in the market, but money destroyed my life. I used to live at Milton Keynes and had a lovely council house, lovely family, Phyllis, my wife, and everything, and my children. And money destroyed me, because all of a sudden I was getting money and I thought I was bigger than what I am. You don't really know me, Lee.
No.
But what you said there, we've only been talking for half an hour. And what you just said there is the truth. Money means nothing to me whatsoever. Look, I love money, of course I do. We all love money. But honestly, I'd rather go to Benidorm for 4 days, enjoy that more than going to the Maldives. Well, I don't know about that. I do the shit the Maldives, but you know what I mean. But in our way, money has never been my God. And there's a lot of people I think you may have had on your show and who talk and everything, and it looks like they're the opposite of me, because I go out there and really and truthfully, I don't give a fuck whether I win or... Well, I do want to win, of course I want to win, but money's never been my godly.
Right, can I get into the inside head of Gary Wiltshire these days, right? So, obviously, you love to take money. You'd love to, like, say to the punters, come on, right, I'll be a standout price here. So what's your tactics in terms of, do you play the man?
Yeah, you play the face, Lee. And them Hooray Emerys that you said, do you want to beat them? God, I love to beat them as well. And I get nothing but satisfaction out of beating someone who I think are cleverer than me.
Yeah.
Look, I've changed, Lee. I've changed to what I used to be, because the betting exchanges have killed you. Because when you used to go to the races and go 11 or 10 and even money chance, you used to lay it. But now everyone's got the prices on their phone. If an horse is 2.06, 9 times out of 10 they're even money. And if you go 11 or 10, people will back it with you, and then they'll lay it off on the exchanges. Look, there's bookies that don't do that. We've got a bookie in the south, Dan A, very, very good judge, paddock judge. He'll go round looking at the horses. We've got Pinot, see on the social media, to Barry Pinnett, and he's a good bookie. He'll better his opinion. Tim Brown, we've got another fella from Sir Ellen's. On his board, he's got bigger than the machine, and he loves it. If something's like 7 or 4 on the machine, he'll go 2 to 1. And he will take a few quid out of it, which is fantastic. These are the characters we still need at the racecourse, Lee. You mentioned earlier, and you said you love our game and we don't want the game to go. When you've got people like that, you've got the likes of Pinot, you've got Tim Brown, you've got the Dan A. That's what you need. Without them, we're gone. There is still people out. I think there's more in the north than there is in the south, funny enough. And they bet quarter of the odds each way, where you can't win, as you know, when there's more than 16 runners. If you bet a quarter of the odds, you're overbroke on the places. But they still do it. And without them, we wouldn't have a game. So they're horrible to bet next to.
Yeah.
If you're betting next to them, you might as well take a box of matches with you 9 times out of 10 and burn your money. But no, they're great people. And now bringing people back to the racecourse.
So what would you say your favourite track is now like to stand under rules anyway? Would it be Perth?
Nah, not really, no.
No.
I love Cheltenham, Lee.
Yeah.
Anyone that tells you they don't enjoy going to Cheltenham, that's a place where they done an article about me in the Sun this year. Jack done it for me. It was when Cheltenham was on, and he put in a story, and I think every bookie that goes to Cheltenham, when they walk through that entrance, they grow a bigger pair of bollocks. It's just unbelievable, Lee. That week, that Tuesday to Friday, all of a sudden, they want to be bookies, you know what I mean? And they want to lay big bets. And please God, it always stays like that, because Cheltenham is the festival. We've got a fantastic man there, a general manager there, Mr. Sir Quentin. He's fantastic who runs it. The X's are big for bookies, they are. But the bookies come on to you and come on to all the other podcasts and say the X's are too much. Of course they are. But the difference is the tracks know, really and truthfully, they've got a rope round their neck. If we never paid it, other bookies would pay it, and they would love it having a less bookie there. So really and truthfully, don't matter what they charge, you're always going to get bookies at these tracks. Unfortunately, because for bookmakers, it is really hard to make it pay now, Lee. I think it's 8 times the admission badge for Cheltenham this year. We had 2 pitches on the rails at Cheltenham, and I think it stood in well over £5 for the 2 pitches. A lot of money.
I think on-course books deserve a break, to be honest. When you consider that the tour are now moving the pitches into prime spots with like bookie-style joints, say Ascot, terrible, that, isn't it?
You look at Chester. I had a pitch at Chester in the D stand. Loved it. Absolutely loved it, honestly. But then Chester, they've got a thing called Chester Bet. And all the bookies' pitches are like proper bookies. What you just said, they're made out. So a stranger going to the races and have a bet, they'll say, "Oh yeah, we've had a bet. Do you have a bet with a bookie?" "Yeah, of course I did. I had a bet with that man over there." But they've got up Chester Bet. But they're exactly the same stand as what you'd get with a normal bookie. And really and truthfully, Lee, that shouldn't be allowed. But look, the tracks have got to make it pay. They've got to get money, because without tracks, there'd be no bookies. And we wouldn't have anywhere to bet before. So, again, it's a 50-50. What gets me is all these jockey club and people like that. And you kindly said, I've been at the game over 50 years, right? And when they do the talks about things, why don't they invite onto their board and someone who knows what they're talking about, like myself? I'm not giving myself a G up, but I know from day one to what's going to happen, what these tracks want to get money into the track. And the people like the Jockey Club and ARC, they think they know what they're doing, but they don't. And we're lucky at Ascot. We've got a chap called Tony May who runs all the betting there. Like, funny enough, he was the one who started Chester Bet, so
Yeah.
we hated him there. But he runs Ascot Bet, and he's even got a dress code. Now, you've been racing a long time. When we used to go, used to look at them bookies that you in Tattersalls, and they was always smart, weren't they, the bookmakers? Were they or not? I'm asking you now.
Always a suit. There might be like others on the joint not in suits, as in if you'd get
Yes.
your Clark and the Tic Tacs are obviously
Yeah.
on a box. But
Yeah.
generally, the man on the stool or the woman on the stool would be always dressed incredibly smart.
Hang on, Lee, you just said something there, a woman on the stool. I don't ever remember a woman on the stool, do you?
True. I've got to be honest here. I'm just trying to be politically correct, I think, in this day and age.
You always used to look up to a bookie. Only the bookie, not the clerk, not the tic tac. Always had a lovely suit, shirt and tie on and everything. And that is our bookies in my eye. I used to love looking at them. When I was a kid, I used to go to the race. I used to look at them, look at their shoes and everything, and used to think, oh, that is bookmaking. And that's what I think of. And now, when you go now, you get women on the stand. Look, don't get me wrong, the women are nice, they're dressed nice, but you get bookies with jeans on, trainers on, and really and truthfully. But at Ascot, give him his due, Tony May, he's got a dress code there. And the bookmakers who bet at Royal Ascot this year, or if you're going to Silver Ring, you'll find they all look smart. And I think that's a good thing. I don't know about your opinion, Lee,
100%.
but I think that's a good thing.
Do you remember, like in the old ground days, like they had bowler hats,
Yes,
walking the
bowler hats,
grounds
yeah,
out
yeah,
onto the
yeah,
track in bowler hats and
yeah.
suits underneath the jacket.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, incredible.
They used to have a white overall, didn't they? But underneath the white overall was a shirt and tie, a suit. And if they won the race and everything, if they went to the presentation at Bellevue, and all of a sudden they took their coat off and you had the shirt and tie. Oh, Lee, you're bringing back memories there. They were the days in my eyes that you can't buy.
Isn't that part of the show? It should be part of the show. That's the part that racing really, whilst it's nice also to be, I suppose, casual sometimes as a race goer and not have to wear a shirt and tie as a race goer, like you say, I think certain parts of racing, they all should be smart. Mark Johnston Racing,
Yes.
always tried quite critical of him on the show, but nevertheless, if you see his representatives that are walking the horse round at the tracks, they all wear the tartan waistcoats.
Always immaculate, and what you just said, and even you see there the horse boxes go on the road, but they all look smart. They've all got the tartan waistcoats on. You're bringing back dog racing as well. At the moment, we've got one man who's trying to put the ground racing back. A man called Mike Davis. He owns the Mark Wallace Kennel,
Yes.
and he's got his own little YouTube show they have. I've been on it a couple of times, and like it's called Gone to the Dogs Live, and it's fantastic. It's not advertised that much because a lot of people don't know it's out there, but you love your grounds, and honestly, I can assure you, if you sat there for 2 hours when it's on, I think it's on again in a couple of weeks at Perry Bar on a Saturday night. I think it might be Easter Saturday it's on. If you go now onto YouTube, you'll see the other meetings that we've had. We had the Yarmouth Derby this year, and it's been on, and it's a great night to watch. Look, the racing's already finished now. We know the results, but just to go back there, and without this man who's putting his money in to try to save ground racing, I think we could be in trouble with ground racing. But he's trying his life. And this year at Toaster, I don't know if you know, they're stopping 10% only at the tote on the winnings, which is fantastic. Harry Finley's been trying it for years and years and years, and he's finally got his wish. And at Toaster this year for the Grand Derby, so where the bookies will be betting to 130% on the race, the tote will be only 110%. So that means if you bet on the tote, you're going to get bigger dividends and you're going to pull people back into the ground game. And that is what we need. We need people to come again to the races, to the dogs. Give them something to look forward for, Lee.
Absolutely. There's so many things that can be done. And like I said, credit to Mike Davis for doing this. The obstacles now that the industry faces, it's ridiculous. The same as the horse racing industry in terms of you're getting attacked from welfare, you're getting attacked from affordability check.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
It's unbelievable. We need to make the sport prosper. Like I said, 10% tote. That is astonishing value.
Oh, it's going to happen. It's definitely going to happen this year at the Grand Derby at Toaster. All eats. And the semi-finals and the quarter-finals and the final. It's definitely going to happen this year. There's going to be a 10%. They do it in Ireland now as well, I've been told, at Shelbourne Park. And all of a sudden, the take on a Saturday night has gone through the roof.
Yeah.
Because people know that you got a chance to win. They say there's mugs out there. Look, of course there's mugs out there. But even mugs are getting fed up. You know what I mean? If you walked into a pub and if you bought a pint of lager and they charge you £20, every night you went in there and you go next door and you can buy it for a tenner, you say, oh, I'm going in that pub next door. And that's what they've got to do. When people go horse racing or dog racing, you've got to give them a chance. I'm telling you, you've been at the game all your life and you know every move in the books. As you're talking today, you've not said one bad word that's wrong. But you're right what you're saying. You need something to pull the people into the race course and give them a chance to come back. Because if they don't come back, we're finished, aren't we, Lee?
As we've said on this podcast many a time, if you kill the dream, in other words, I have to turn up to believe I can beat Gary Wiltshire. Gary Wiltshire has to turn up to believe he can beat me.
Absolutely.
That is how the game has to work. This is the problem now that big corporation basically is a pie where everyone can have a slice or a bite. Sadly, we're at the situation where big corp has taken that much of it that everyone's just fighting for the scraps that's left. And that's not how the game used to be back in the 90s when you were on with Big Mac on the telly. Fantastic days. Some conversations I've seen with you, Big Mac, on the telly back then were absolutely legendary. In fact, that's what drove fans to the sport. We could see your passion.
Yeah, but Big Mac, he was hard. He was an hard man to come up against because he had his opinions and he thought he was right. But 99 times out of 100, he was right. I remember I had a bit of a dispute and they got me on the morning line. It was on the Oxford days when Ladbrokes banned me. I couldn't bet at the bags tracks, but I could bet at night because I was taking too big a bet. They wanted to shorten the horses up, whatever. Anyway, I'll never forget, I went on the show and John Frankham was on there and he said to me, I've never met John Frankham in my life, but he said to me, whatever you do, be careful because he'll try to slip in a question that he hasn't put on the page here. This is Big Mac. And he did, as he was talking about betting and he said, are you a gambling bookmaker? And I said, John, all bookmakers are gamblers. So I said, look at you. When you had a go at Epsom, you've done your money, didn't you?
Yeah.
That stopped him in his tracks. But on this podcast, please God, it's going out before Aintree, is it?
Yes.
I'll give you a story about Aintree in the old days, about bookies. And before the exchanges, it used to be the best place to make a book at. We had a pitch on the rails and we had a pit in the county stand. I think I was betting under Tote Sport at them days, Joe Scanlon. And what you had then, and I should imagine they still do it now, but you wouldn't know. And the reps used to come round. There was like a name, say like Beautiful Lips or something. And if it was 66 to 1, you had Corals, you had William Hill, you had Ladbrokes, and they used to come up and said 25,001 Beautiful Lips. Now it's 66 on my board, but I've laid them 25. But then naturally I've got to go 20. So the 66 come off the board and I put 20. And you might have laid, honestly, no word of a lie, you could have laid up to 16 or 20 horses to the firms because they shortened up. They wanted their SP. What they're doing now with the industry SPs, same sort of thing. But in them days, instead of betting them on the exchanges, they had to bet them with you. And that's why the prices, they used to come down. The last 2 minutes, Lee, 3 minutes, if you notice, the prices of the SPs of the horses in the national, not all of them, but the ones with fancy names, they used to back and they used to make sure that they was under the odds, at least half the price what they should have been.
Yeah.
And that's how they did it, all the big firms. And whether or not they do it now on the exchanges, I should imagine yes. I should imagine they do. I should imagine the big three. Don't forget they've got so many betting shops now. And the liabilities, if you had a name of an horse that everyone wanted a back, they've got to put money on it to shorten it up. I would have thought it still happens now, but I don't know. But in them days, being a bookie at Aintree was fantastic. Look, they could still win. I laid it also the last time I was there, one of David Johnson's. I think I laid it as 66 to 1, the green and blue for Martin Pipe. It was, you know, he used to
Yeah,
have all
yeah.
the
The
horses.
Ocean Finance guy. Yeah, yeah.
That's it, yeah, yeah. And it was 66 to 1, and I think I laid 25,000 to 1 twice, and then like 2 grand at 25 to 1. And then to top it all up, William Hills come in at the end, or one of the firms, and had a 16,000 to 1, and I think it was 14 to 1. And it led where they come round the own, not the Melling Road, but where they come over that road near the round in the straight, and it was there. It was only about 4 or 5 of them there, and it was there, and I stood it for the jackpot light, but it weren't in there. It was nowhere in the end. But that's what the big firms used to do, because you can imagine this Saturday is going to be the biggest day. I don't care what you say about Derby Day's finished. When it was on a Wednesday, you had more people betting on it, but now it's Saturday. But I think Grand National Day this week is massive. And you can imagine the big firms, they don't want horses to start at 66 and 50 to 1, do they?
No.
If they shorten it up and send a few quid back to the exchange, if they make it 35 to 1, and then the SP will be 25 or 28, because the bookies now don't go, well, it don't make no difference now, the bookies, does it? Because the industry SPs, I don't know who runs them, Lee. I haven't got a clue. I haven't got a clue who puts the industry SPs up. But if they see something at 35 on Betfair, I can guarantee you one thing: you can have the last pound out of my pocket, it won't return 40. Everything the industry SPs is under to what the machines are. So they'll return it 28. The big bookies have got their wish again, haven't they?
Well, they saw an opportunity during COVID, didn't they?
Oh, sure that, yeah.
Run their own SP service, which is pretty scandalous, I've got to say. Coming on to other things, just to finish the show.
We could go on for 10 hours, couldn't we, Lee? I'm talking.
We could sit until 11 o'clock, and I know you've got an engagement this evening.
Yeah, we're doing a preview this evening in London, so I'll have Paul Jones banging on the door in a minute. We're doing it there, but I don't know what they're asking me about Grand National for, because really and truthfully, go on, carry on what you were saying anyway. Sorry, mate.
I've got right. So there's a couple of things from the book really that I really want to touch on that made me laugh and howl. We're going back to grounds again, because obviously it's a big part of your life also. The hurdles at Oxford. Tell me more.
Yeah, we used to. Well, I got fortunes out of this, and honestly, when I say fortunes, I used to get you 1,200 quid, 1,500 quid every week. And there was a groundsman there. He was as straight as a die, honestly, on my life. But over the far side, I think you had one hurdle in the straight and 2 hurdles over the far side. And we used to give him £25 a day, and he used to bang the hurdles in like really hard. There was 2 panels, either the inside or the outside panels. He would make like bang them into the ground really hard. Well, it's like when you're coming up to something to jump, if you was on a beach or anything, if you something flimsy, you just go through it and you gain 3 lengths, whatever. You went on the inside, and then on the following week we done it on the outside, inside, and we was having forecast and combinations like on the inside one week, outside another week. The actual racing manager, I think he nearly had a nervous breakdown in the end, because he was running the same dogs week after week. They only had about 10 or 12 dogs in the hurdle strength. And they was all shit dogs.
Yeah.
But you put them in a normal race, there'd be nothing between them. But all of a sudden, if they know they're going to lose 4 or 5 lengths at every hurdle over the far side. Look, it never come up every week, but we had 8 out of 10 up come up. And like all gambling stories, don't think I've done my money a few times as well.
Oh, no.
It ain't only all success, but they were the good days, the Oxford days. That weren't because of that, but that was the day when I was on the mauling line where I laid someone a 6,002 a punter there, because like a real good punter we had, Phil Matten. And then Ladbrokes come up and had 2001, and I never shortened it. I left it up. And they said, oh, you can't do that. You've got to go 6-4. And I said, it's still a winner in the book, which it was.
Yeah.
And that was the end of me on a Friday afternoon. I never went back there. I went back there at night. I was good enough to go at night, but I weren't good enough to go in the afternoon. It's a ridiculous story. It's laughable now, really. It's laughable
It's
now.
great stories. That's obviously the purpose of the book, which is standing. Final question from myself to you is, personally, you describe yourself earlier in your life as a mug punter and couldn't make it pay punting.
Done my bollocks.
But obviously bookmaking's taught you a lot, and now you can evaluate characters, you can evaluate judges, people you've come across in your life. So I want to touch on one more thing in the book that I found absolutely fascinating. Threat of suspending your tipping line. What happened there?
Well, that was fun enough. She's sitting next to me, Sharon, now. It was my own fault, Lee. I had a horse as well, and it was in a 3-horse race one day at Fontwell, and it was lame. When I say lame, he used to run to a mile, and he so many niggling. He's like me now when I walk along the street. Ankle hurts, or my back hurts, or my knee hurts, and this horse was favourite. It was a 3-horse race at Fontwell, and they put him in at 6-4 on. And we had a little tipping line. Sharon used to run it. We used to put a PO box, it was, and people, I think we charged people 40 quid to put on the selections. But don't get me wrong, the 40 quid they put on, they got fortunes out of it. Because Did used to get good information. I used to put them in the dogs at Oxford as well. So really and truthfully, that 40 quid, you'd pay £400 for it now. And that day, anyway, at 10 o'clock, she used to give out the message, and I said to her, right, put out here, we're having a reverse forecast, 1 and 3. And we're back in 1 and we're back in 3. I think our 2 was 5-2 and 5-2. And it was stupid. It was flashness. It was ridiculous what I did. Anyway, our horse went off favourite at Fontwell, but it drifted. Like, I think it returned 5-4, and I think the other 2 were both 2-1. Our horse, halfway round, like, he pulled up. He weren't injured or nothing, just he weren't good enough. And afterwards, I got a phone call the following day, and it said, look, Gal, and it was from someone high above, and I mean very high above. I've never mentioned the name because I've never been a grass all my life, but someone very high above, and said, look, you've got a good name. If you don't stop this service, right, we'll stop you.
Yeah.
You've got a good name on the racetrack, you've got a good face and everything, but if you don't stop it, we'll stop you. And I said, yeah, well, no problems, I'll make sure it's all done by the end of the week. And he said, I think you've heard me wrong. If you don't stop it now, it's finished.
Wow.
And that was the day the tipping service ended. It was my fault, Lee. Sometimes in life you've got to hold your hands up, haven't you? You've got to think to yourself, well, what have I done wrong or different? But that was it, and that was the end of that. And another chapter in the life of Gary Wiltshire, weren't it? Some of the stories in that book, honestly, I've got to thank Weatherby's, because without Weatherby's, they published the book and everything. A lot of these other places as well, Lee, but if you want to publish a book, you've got to go in there and you've got to put 10 grand up. And Weatherby's, give them their due, they thought to themselves, we'd take a gamble. They shouldn't gamble, really, Weatherby's, because they're a high breed. But Johnny Weatherby, David Craven, and they said, no, we'll do it. If it's a failure, it's a failure. But they're very, very happy with the sales, how it's gone. It's lovely for my grandchildren when they get older. All the tricks and all that. Funny enough, Fred Doan, he's in it quite a lot. He even texted me today, Fred. He put, Gal, I'm in Thailand, enjoying reading your book. A lot of old names from the past and some strokes you pulled. Said, I wish the game was the same. Without exchanges and computers, it was definitely more fun. Enjoy Better Dawn, Fred. And that was from Fred. So you're saying he was an angel before, but I can assure you, I said, Fred, I bet you pulled some strokes in your time as well. Funny enough, I never got an answer to that one day. It's funny, isn't it? It's amazing you've done it. It's just one of them things. Who'd you fancy for the national, Lee? You got to give me a national winner.
Minella Kakuna, I think, has got a shout at a price. Iroka's the right fav, I believe. But these late market moves, like you say on the day, can be quite telling.
I'll tell you one horse, Lee, who will drift. There's an horse called Intense Raffles. It's a small trainer. They're all saying it'll start 4-1, right? Will it start 4-1? It's a small trainer. People look at names and everything, and a name like that, Intense Raffles. I think Hitman's got absolutely zero chance. If I could lay Hitman first 10 places, I'd lay that now. I don't think he'd get home. Do you, Hitman?
Man's always been a weak finisher.
A weak finisher.
He obviously suffers from either bleeding or wind issues because
He's definitely got a
yeah,
problem.
yeah.
If I had to pick a glass horse, what you just said, I think you've got to be a Roko. I just think there's a lot of horses there that are too short. I'll tell you the two at a big price who could run well. Minello Indo, I thought that's got a chance because that ran well last year,
Yep.
didn't it? And it's 66.80 to 1. And there's a fellow on the internet, Steve, who I respect, and he's put that up at a big price if it runs, Duffel Coat.
Oh, God.
If it runs, I think you're right. At the moment, you wouldn't know who's going to be favourite. Stumptown, I know it won at Cheltenham, but he won that cross-country race. But you go round 6 times to the favourite hits the front in that race, don't they, really? There's a lot of slow horses in that race in their league. I'm looking forward to the National. I really am. I love it. I've enjoyed, honestly, mate, and I really respect him for inviting me onto your show. And if anything I can do at a future stage, I'm always here for you, mate. And I've loved every minute talking a bit of history. And you can't get history, can you? The only time you can get history in a library. But we've had a bit of history today, haven't we? Talking about the games we love, dog racing and horse racing. And we do love it, don't we, Dave?
Plenty of fun. Honestly, this was so fun to do. And Gary's book, of course, 50 Years Betting in the Jungle, is available at weatherby'sshop.co.uk. This was so good to do. I've absolutely enjoyed every minute of it. I hope you got out of it what I've got out of it speaking to Gal. That's all from us. Bye for now.